My name is Lee. Oh, yes, thank you, Emma. We are going to be recording this to be able to use later to share with others. If you have any issues with that, you can just message Emma. Um, and Want to welcome everyone. Thank you for being here this wonderful evening to be able to honor the memory and legacy of Romero. We're going to be diving into themes of historical memory, seeds of change that we are planting. And we have a very special guest today, Jonathan Mejia, who I'll be introducing more about later. I'd also like to just briefly introduce my wonderful co-hosts today. Patrice, if you could wave your hand. And then we'll also be hearing tonight from Emma and Michael, who some of you may also know. So thank you all for being here and really excited to get to be in this space together. To open our time together and give you all a chance to connect and start building community, start getting your spirits, your minds, your hearts thinking about these themes. We're going to get in some brief breakout rooms, about 5 minutes. And each breakout room is going to have a quote from Romero, which we're going to be talking a lot about today. I'm going to put a Google Doc in the chat. Um, just sorry, let me change it to everyone. I'm going to put a Google chat document in the Google chat that everyone should be able to open, and you'll see a list of 4 quotes in English and Spanish. And if you want to check that out and see if there's a quote that sticks out to you in particular, because in a moment, you're going to be able to choose which breakout group to join to talk about that individual quote. So group 1 will be talking about the quote that starts the church. Group 2 will be talking about the quote that starts with if they kill me. Group 3 will be talking about the quote that starts with when the church. And then group 4, which will actually be staying in this main room, and that's to keep the Spanish interpretation. So if you also need the Spanish interpretation, I apologize. Your quote has been chosen for you. You will need to stay in the main room to be able to keep that interpretation. So you'll just stay behind if you're going to do quote 4, or if you need Spanish translation. You all are going to have 5 minutes to discuss the quote. Why did you choose that group? What does this quote mean to you? If you could then pick someone to report back, well, when we come back together, we'll just hear a couple of brief comments, a couple of sentences, just talking about what came up for you in your group. So just to review breakout rooms, you should in a moment, Kelly, if you want to put up that pop-up. And you know what? So Aurora, great question. So I'll share it again. There's a Google Doc, but I will also copy and paste them in. I'll copy and paste them in the chat as well, if my thing would help. Okay. So Kelly's going to create the rooms in a moment, and you'll see something pop up that asks you if you want to join group 1, group 2, or group 3. Oh, sorry, those numbers got messed up when I pasted it in the chat. I apologize. I don't know why that did. Um, and if you need Spanish translation or you like quote the 4th quote, you're going to stay behind and not choose a group. You're just going to stay in this main room. All right, so we can open the breakout rooms and people can choose. Oh, did it pop up for other people? It didn't. Normally it pops up. If it did not pop up for you, go back down to your toolbar right next to where you picked your interpretation. You should see a breakout room icon. You just click on that and you'll see room 1, room 2, room 3. I see some people already joined. So you can just pick which room you'd like to be in.
Salvadoran movement for a better country did plant some seeds, although it's an understatement to say there have been setbacks, but they're better able to organize than they would have been had the work not been done in the 1980s and before, certainly.
And what can I do beyond writing checks, which I know is helpful, but
marching to go to rallies. I mean,
yep.
picket Congress people's offices. And
so really great question, Daisy, and you're going to have some time a little bit later to dive even deeper into that question, which I'm excited to see you all excited to discuss. We got a little taste of group 4's conversation. I'm curious, group 1, how was your conversation? I know it was pretty short, but we're going to have breakout room later as well. This is just to kind of get your appetite going, a little taste. But group 1, anything you'd like to share with us?
Well, we talked about the fact that the church needs to be, I think, constantly reminded not to be indifferent to the marginalized. And that's tricky because sometimes they're the ones that the church, for doctrinal reasons, can't accept. But in El Salvador, we saw a great flowering of the church and its care for the marginalized with Bishop Romero and many, many other priests and catechists and so forth. Guys, want to add anything?
Thanks, Sheila. How about group 2?
Gotta be you.
Sorry, I didn't hear you, Sarah.
I'm saying it's Edward who's got to report back.
Oh, it's Edward. Well, I don't see Edward.
Oh, well, we just were discussing about how, in this Easter season that, Romero was reborn among the people, and that the movement is strong in El Salvador, and the church really can't, even though they made him a saint, they really can't control the movement because the people have taken over the movement and the process.
Thank you. Brian, I saw you nodding your head when Sheila was talking. Do you want to share kind of what came up in group 3?
Yeah, just that, some of us would like to see our churches speak out more loudly and prophetically about the social injustices and the structures that are causing the problems, and not merely just like doing charity work to help people downstream that are already impacted, but rather going upstream to address the structures.
Great, thank you. And thank you, everyone. Wonderful start. Let's keep going. I'm going to pass things over to my wonderful co-facilitator, Patrice. So Patrice.
So thank you for all of those thoughts about Romero's quotes. And to give a little context, I will share a brief overview of who he was and also talk about the goals for our event today. Oscar Romero was an Archbishop of the Catholic Church in El Salvador. He spoke out against injustice and violence around the time of the Salvadoran Civil War. and he was ultimately assassinated on March 24th, 1980. This year is his 45th anniversary of his martyrdom. And so that is why we are here today to not only talk about his life, but also his work and how that can be a legacy for us even today. The goal of our event is to meet our fundraising goal for a fundraiser to support CRIPDES organizers' salaries. CRIPDES, our partner organization in El Salvador. And this can support organizers, including our speaker today, one of our guest speakers, Jonathan, as well as Sister Cities work. We also want to reflect on our past in order to act for a better future. So how much do we need to raise still? We actually need to raise still $2,100. We appreciate all of the people that have already donated, which is like almost half of what we set out to do. So this money again will help to fund our partner organizations, CRIPDES, their organizer salaries, and some of Sister Cities' operational costs. So we will put a link in the chat where you can donate. And also want to draw your attention to a book called Aquí Estamos, which has reflections from 25 years of U.S. El Salvador sister cities work. Thank you so much for your attention, and we will go now into talking about historical memory, and Emma will be leading this section.
Yes, thank you so much, Patrice, and thank you everybody for sharing all of your thoughts already on the quotes. We're very excited to have you all here at this event tonight. So as many of you know by now, I was first introduced to the Salvadoran struggle and Sister City solidarity work by Professor Molly Todd at Montana State University. And there I was part of a project that was working to make accessible the hidden histories of refugees, exiles, and their international networks via documents, photos, drawings, and more from the Salvadoran Civil War years, many of which these archives were from sister cities, members, and committees. Then I had the fantastic opportunity to attend the 2019 Summer Popular Education School in Sinquiera, El Salvador. And through both of these experiences, I learned the important role of historical memory and solidarity organizations in the fight against empire and in the struggle for life. During the Popular Education School in 2019, I noticed that in organized communities in El Salvador, historical memory is not just something that people carry, it's something that they really live. It's a seed passed from hand to hand through stories, protests, murals, and relationships like the ones that we build in sister cities. When we talk about historical memory, we're talking about something active, something that resists forgetting. And we're talking about solidarity, an act that doesn't come from pity, but from shared commitment and responsibility, really from a place of love. Stories of disappearance, of resistance, of organizing under fire form the foundation of the relationships we have with our Salvadoran partners today. And remembering these stories isn't just an act of honoring the past, it's an act of accountability. Many of us who are here tonight live in the US, and we have to remember that the US government played a central role in the war. And today, it still fuels the systems that displace, extract, and divide. As social movements again face great repression and violence in the US and El Salvador, we can ground ourselves in the fact that we have been through hard times before, and that together we will continue our shared struggle for justice. Drawing on history, in Sister City's book that we had dropped in the chat, Aquí Estamos, one Salvadoran organizer summed up the fact that working people around the globe face a common enemy in empire, and that we must work together in order to meet the needs of people and planet. They said, "We don't want your charity, we want your accompaniment." That accompaniment means showing up, not just emotionally, but materially. Showing up tonight. So, good job. Grassroots organizations like Sister Cities don't survive on foundations or big donors. They're sustained by people like us, by our time, our organizing, our relationships, and yes, our financial support. So thanks again in advance for everybody who is making a donation to help us reach our goal. When we support grassroots movements and organizations like Sister Cities and CRIPDES, we're investing in long-term justice, not just short-term aid. We're strengthening the capacity of communities to define their own futures. And we're also transforming ourselves, learning to follow, to listen, to lead, and to act in ways that reflect a deeper solidarity. In a moment, we will hear from Jonathan and the words of Archbishop Oscar Romero, words that were born in the middle of a war, and words that still call us today to a deeper kind of love and trust rooted in the people. The memory that we honor tonight is not passive. It is alive, it is calling, and it is ours to carry forward. And with that, I will pass it over to Lee to introduce the next section.
Thank you, Emma. There are a couple different people that were going to do that section, and I am so happy that, and Emma, you ended up doing that because that was beautiful. Thank you. All right, so now to our main event. I'm really honored and excited to be able to introduce Jonathan Mejia, who's here to share their work with us and to help us think more about the legacy and how we can honor the memory of Romero. So a little bit about Jonathan. So he is about to graduate with a degree in sociocultural anthropology from the University of El Salvador. Over the past 5 years, he has specialized in the field of historical memory and human rights. During his work as a social researcher, he has carried out a series of studies and publications that include, first, the article Remembering Our Hero and Martyr, a study on the historical memory of Father Rutilio Grande in El Paisnel, San Salvador. It was published in Identidades, a journal of social sciences and humanities issued by the Ministry of Culture of El Salvador. The social, political, and religious impact of Oscar Arnulfo Romero and Rutilio Grande. He also published a historical review of the country's current situation in terms of post-Mitch risk, a research study conducted as part of the project National Pact for Comprehensive Risk Management. In addition, The Legacy of Us, a book that compiles testimonies of women who defended the rights of vulnerable and displaced populations during the armed conflict in El Salvador. This book was created within the framework of the Women Guardians of Peace Project, funded by the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. He has experience as a project coordinator in the areas of human rights, rule of law, historical memory, and transitional justice. He's a certified site tour guide specializing in historical memory, accredited by Corsatur and MeTour. He has experience in archival processing, document management, and photographic documentation. Additionally, he works as a facilitator with youth regarding leadership and human rights topics. So I'll now pass things over to our special guest. Thank you for being here.
Buenas tardes, un gusto.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to meet
Pues
everyone.
primeramente, gracias por la invitación
Well,
a este
primarily,
bonito
thank you for the
espacio.
invitation to this beautiful space.
Quizás para hablar un poquito más quién soy y de dónde vengo.
Perhaps to talk a
Soy
little
un
bit
joven
more
de
of who I
29
am and where
años
I come from. I'm a
que
young
nació
person of
post
29 years
conflicto
of age
armado
who was
en
born
1995.
post-conflict time
La
in
paz en El Salvador se
1996.
firma en
Sorry,
1992.
95.
Sin embargo, vengo de familia que fue afectada,
I come
fue
from a
víctima de
family that
violaciones de
was
derechos
affected
humanos
and
del
was a
pasado
victim
conflicto
of
armado.
the violation of
Por
human rights.
ejemplo,
For
desplazamientos
example,
forzados,
forced displacement.
y también perdí familiares en la
And I
guerra.
also lost a lot of family
Todo este
members in the war.
antecedente me motivó
All of
como
this
joven
was a big
conocer
motivation for me
acerca
when I was
de qué
young
pasó en
to find
mi
out
país,
more
El
on
Salvador.
what happened here in my
En mi
country in
vocación
El
como
Salvador.
investigador social y como
And in my
antropólogo,
career now
me
in
adentré
investigating and being a
a conocer
historian,
primeramente sobre estos
I
procesos
took the leap
históricos
to
y
find out
comprender
more
el
about these
significado que tienen
different
símbolos
patterns of history
o
and the
guías
symbols
espirituales como
and
Monseñor Romero,
spiritualism
Rutilio
like
Grande y otros
the Señor
padres
Romero
que ofrendaron su
and other
vida por
archbishops
construir un
that
mundo más
gave
justo.
their life to make a
Es
better
así
world.
que para hablar del legado de Monseñor Romero en la
So to talk
actualidad,
about the legacy of
considero muy
Dr. of the Señor
importante
Romero, I
que hay que
find it very
comprender este
important
proceso
that we have
histórico
to
de las
comprehend
luchas de los
this
movimientos
historic
sociales y
timeline
de las
of
comunidades de El
struggles
Salvador.
and social movements and communities in El Salvador.
Partiendo de la primera frase,
From the
que es la
first phase,
siguiente,
which is the following,
es los derechos de la mujer,
the rights
solidaridad.
of the women,
La iglesia no puede
solidarity.
ser diferente entre los grupos
The
de los
church cannot
marginados,
be different
especialmente las
to the
mujeres
Christ,
que suelen ser más oprimidas.
especially from the women
Mencionar que
who
para
are the
esta
most oppressed.
presentación
I mentioned
posee
this because in this
pues
presentation,
datos
I
empíricos
use a lot
que he
of
venido
data
recolectando a
that
partir
I
de
have
mis
been
investigaciones.
collecting from my
Entre la más
investigations.
reciente pues es el libro del legado de
The most
nosotras,
recent
que
is
narra
from the
pues
book
la
of the
memoria y
Legacy of Us,
experiencia de mujeres
which talks
que
about the
perdieron los
legacy and
derechos humanos en sus
history of
comunidades,
women who fought and
y
struggled
algo
for
muy
the
presente
human
y
rights
marcado en el testimonio
in
de
their
ella
towns.
es la influencia y valores que tuvo Monseñor Romero y otros líderes
So
espirituales en su pensamiento.
I want to talk about the legacy
Muchos
of
de estos
Of
testimonios
Mr. Romero.
van a ser
A lot of these
de mujeres
testimonies are going to be
que
of women
vivieron este proceso de injusticia y
who lived
represión
this
del conflicto
process of
armado.
oppression and conflict.
Empiezo mencionando que, como se conoce en la historia de El
I start
Salvador,
by
a
mentioning
finales del
because, as
siglo
you may
XX,
know,
es
in the history of El
caracterizada por
Salvador at
gobiernos
the
de
end of the
carácter
20th
autoritario
century,
y militar
there's a dictator and
encargado
a
de velar por los
military ship
intereses económicos y políticos,
and lots of
caracterizada
economic
por
and
fraudes
political struggles
electorales que se perpetuaban de
that
poder
are
y
shown by
garantizaban
fraud
beneficios de una pequeña élite
and
económica.
only benefiting the
Estos
elite.
gobiernos se caracterizaron por la
These
explotación de mano de
governments
obra
were
de las
known
grandes
for
mayorías de
exploiting
la población
labor of the
salvadoreña,
majority of the
como
people of El
también de
Salvador,
reprimir a todo aquel
and
individuo o
also
grupo de
oppressing
personas que
all types of
intentaban
groups and
desafiar o
people
contradecir
who
el
tried
orden
to
establecido.
defy
Uno de los
and fight
pequeños
against
fragmentos del primer
the
testimonio
current
que
government.
retomo es el de María Rivera. Ella es una
One of these
habitante de la
testaments
comunidad de
that he
Arcatao,
talks about is about
Chalatenango,
Maria Rivera,
y ella nos narra un
a
poco
women
cómo era
leader
la
from
represión que
Arcato,
se
and
daba
she talks a little bit about the
previo a los años 80,
repression
previo al inicio del conflicto armado.
before
Ella
the armed
menciona, así es como nos
conflict.
empezaron a reprimir.
And she mentions
Una vez
this
llegaron a
is how
casa,
they started to
reempujaron las
oppress us
puertas los
once they
soldados,
came to our
me sacaron
homes
de la
and
casa y me
broke the
dijeron que no
doors, took us
sabían
out
con
of
quién se iban a
our
meter.
homes
Yo
and
les
told us
decía,
they didn't know,
déjenme a
we didn't
mí,
know who
y
we were
mire,
messing
yo
with.
soy una joven,
And I told
déjenme
them, leave
cuidando a mis
me,
hermanos. No,
I
no,
I'm
me
taking
dijeron.
care of my
Me agarraron
community. And
del
they told
brazo,
me no,
me
they took me
sacaron,
from the arm
nos
and
dijeron,
they
ya
took me
informamos
out
cuántas
and
personas
told
hay
me
aquí,
we already
así que
informed
te
them how
vamos a
many
llevar.
people are here, so we are
Y
going
se
to
la
take
llevaron allá
you.
para el cuartel.
They
El
took
teniente la
her.
agarra, a la
The
mamá de
lieutenant got
ahí,
her,
de
the
otra
mom and
señora,
her and another
mientras le
lady,
ponían los cigarros prendidos en la cara y le
and they would
gritaba que viva
turn off,
muerto.
burn, or they
En
would
este
burn off
testimonio vemos
cigarettes in their
reflejado un poco
faces
de la represión de que la mayoría de la
and
población en
talking
El Salvador
about
vivió
Viva, or
previo al conflicto armado y
Viva the
durante el
order.
conflicto armado. Un papel importante, si me puedes ayudar, Kelly, con la siguiente,
If you can help
es
me with
que
the following,
el
Kelly.
papel que tuvo la visión social
The
de la
paper,
iglesia
the
a
vision
partir de la
that the
opción
church
preferencial por
had
los pobres.
after this for the
Muchos
poor,
investigadores sociales
a lot of
mencionan que la iglesia
investigators
fue clave en el proceso histórico,
saw that
en
the
el
church
proceso
was
de
key in
concientización que
this
se da de las
process, in this
comunidades
historic
especiales de
process,
base,
in
lo que se
helping
conoció como la
the
opción preferencial de los pobres.
grassroots
Mucha
organizations
de
like
la
the poor.
población se
A
vuelve
lot of the
consciente de los
population
problemas de la
became
realidad que
conscious of
se
the
vive
problems of
y
the
contribuye
reality
en gran
there,
manera que la gente se organice
and they
y
start
luche
to
por defender sus
organize
derechos.
and fight for their rights.
La teología de la liberación
The
tenía tres
liberation
ejes principales,
theology was
que
very
eran la
present,
dignidad de la persona,
and
el bien
it
común y
rooted
la
for
justicia
dignity
social.
and
Esto permitió un
community
proceso de
justice.
concientización y formación del fortalecimiento del movimiento social. Con la siguiente,
With the following,
bueno, a medida, la siguiente, que a medida el movimiento social iba agarrando fuerza,
at
producto
the
de la
same
influencia que
time,
tuvo la iglesia
the
y esos líderes, en
organizations
su
were
mayoría de
getting
vocación
gaining a lot of
jesuita,
power with the help of the
jugaron un
church,
papel importante,
and they played an
pero esto no
important
fue del
role.
agrado de
But
gobernadores
this
que estaban al
wasn't
frente del
beneficial to
gobierno
the
en El
government,
Salvador a
and they
finales de la
didn't like
década de los
this
70.
at the end of the
Eh,
70s.
y bueno, empieza lo que se conoció como la
And
persecución
then
a
is what
líderes
started
espirituales.
about
El
the
primer mártir de
persecution
la
of
iglesia,
spiritual leaders, the first martyr of the
el
church
primer mártir de la iglesia fue el padre Rutilio
was
Grande,
Father Rutilio
quien tuvo
Grande,
un vínculo de amistad
who had a
con nuestro
big
santo
friendship
Monseñor Romero.
with the Santo Romero.
Pues Rutilio Grande es
Rutilio Grande
asesinado el
was
12 de marzo de
assassinated
1977,
in March 12,
cuando él iba a
1977,
oficializar una misa.
when he
Lo
was about to
acompañaba un
start
señor campesino y un niño.
a sermon. And with
Mencionan
him were a
que
kid and a
es
campesino.
emboscado por escuadrones de la muerte
And they came
y
to
lo
find
asesinan
him with
proporcionándole alrededor de 12
guns, and they
disparos. Con ellos
assassinated
mueren
him with 12
sus
gunshots.
acompañantes
With
Nelson
him,
Rutilio Lemus y Manuel
Lemus
Solórzano.
and Toloso were also murdered.
Otro testimonio es de
Another
Isabel Hernández
testimony is
y ella
Isabel
nos dice
Hernandez,
un poco.
and she said,
Siguiente,
next, please.
Que en los años 80 empezó la
In the
represión,
80s,
la
repression
persecución de los
began, the
catequistas.
persecution of Catholics.
Perseguían a los que
They
andábamos en la
persecuted those
iglesia.
of us involved in the
Recuerdo que
church. I
mataron a
remember
varios
they killed
jóvenes de la
several young
parroquia.
people from the
Y
parish,
cuenta
and our
aquí que nuestro
pastor,
párroco, el
Father
padre David
David
Rodríguez,
Rodriguez,
se
had
tuvo
to
que
leave
ir ya
because
que
they
lo
were already
perseguían.
chasing
La
him.
muerte de
The
Monseñor
death of
Romero
Monsignor
puso
Romero
la
made the
situación más
situation even
difícil.
harder.
Empezaron a
They started
matar
killing young
jóvenes
people
en el
in
cantón
the
San
San
Carlos
Carlos
en
village,
Cabañas,
Sustatempeque
donde
Cabañas,
vivíamos
where we lived.
nosotros. Otro de los líderes religiosos que
Another of the
fueron
religious leaders
perseguidos,
that were
criminalizados
also
y asesinados
criminalized and
previo
killed
al asesinato de Monseñor
previously
Romero
before Señor
fueron,
Romero
por
were
ejemplo, el padre Alfonso Navarro,
the father
asesinado el
Alfonso
11 de mayo de
Navarro, who was
1977,
assassinated the 11th of May
2 meses
1977,
después del asesinato
2 months
Beato
before the
Rutilio Grande.
assassination of
Después
Actor Rutilio
asesinan a
Grande.
otro líder espiritual,
Then they
Ernesto
killed another
Barrera, el
spiritual leader,
28 de
Ernesto
noviembre del
Barrera,
78.
on November
Otro
28th,
fue Octavio
1978.
Ortiz, el
Another
20 de
one
enero
was
de
Octavio Ortiz
1979.
on January 20th,
Rafael Palacios,
1979.
el 20 de
Rafael
junio de
Palacios in June
1979.
20th,
Pero
1979.
no solo estaban asesinando a
But
líderes
not only were
espirituales,
they
sino que también estaban
assassinating
asesinando a
spiritual leaders,
población
but they
civil
were also just
que habían
assassinating civil
decidido
society
compartir estos ideales
who were sharing
de la
these
iglesia, de la
ideals
opción
of
preferencial
the
por los pobres.
church and
Es así que
preference for
el
the poor.
24 de marzo de 1980
And in
asesinan a Monseñor
1984,
Romero.
they
Pero un día
in
antes,
1980,
el
sorry, they
día
assassinated
23 de
Monsignor
marzo,
Romero.
en su última homilía
And
dijo
in the
lo
23rd of
siguiente,
March, the day before he was martyred.
y esta homilía es bastante conocida. porque fue
And
la
this
última
event
homilía que
is very
Monseñor
well
Romero
known
dio en
because
vida
this was his
y
last speech
dijo,
that he gave in person.
queremos que el
We want
gobierno
the
tome en
government to
serio
take
que nada
seriously that
sirven las
reforms
reformas
are no
si
use
van teñidas de
if they
tanta
are
sangre.
stained with so much
En
blood.
el nombre de
In
Dios,
the name of
en el
God,
nombre
in
de
the
este
name of this
sufrido
suffering
pueblo,
people whose laments
cuyos lamentos
rise
suben hasta
to
el
heaven
cielo,
every day,
cada día más
more
tumultuosos,
tumultuous,
le
I beg
suplico,
you,
le
I
ruego,
plead with
les
you, I
ordeno,
command
en nombre
you,
de
in
Dios,
the name of
cese
God,
la represión.
stop the repression.
Las
End
palabras de
quote.
Monseñor Romero
The
se
words of
volvieron de
Monsignor
carácter muy
Romero
importante y de
were very
acompañamiento a la
important and
población que estaba siendo
accompanied
reprimida,
the community
producto de
that was
este
being
sistema
oppressed
autoritario que
because
se
of
estaba
this
dando en El Salvador.
dictatorship that was
Después de
happening in
la
El
muerte
Salvador.
de el señor Romero, de
After the
Monseñor
assassination
Romero,
of Monsignor
se da lo
Romero
que se conoció, bueno, como el funeral. Lo
was the
asesinan
funeral.
el 24 de
They
marzo.
assassinated him on
El
the
funeral
24th of
fue el
March.
30 de
The
marzo, según
funeral was on
relatos
the
de
30th of
pobladores.
March.
En estos 5 o 6 días hubo
And this
protestas del
in
movimiento
between these
social
5 to 6 days,
campesino,
there was a lot of
sindicatos
protests
y obreros,
from the unions and the labor workers,
pues repudiando el asesinato de
which,
Monseñor
yeah,
Romero.
just
El día
renouncing the
de su
assassination of
funeral, el
Monsignor
30
Romero.
de marzo
The day
de
of his funeral on
1980,
30th of March in
también se
1980,
da una concentración
there was also a
de
concentration
población civil
of civil society
en la plaza conocida como la
in the
Plaza
plaza that
Gerardo
is known
Barrios o la
as
Plaza
Gerardo
Cívica,
Barrios, or
que ha jugado un
the
papel
Civic Plaza,
importante
which has played an
en las
important role
manifestaciones
in the
de movimientos
manifestations
sociales.
of
El
civil
día de su
justice
funeral hay una concentración de
and of
alrededor
human
de
rights.
60,000 personas
In the
de
day of
población
his
civil,
funeral, there's a concentration of
y en
60,000
medio
people.
del funeral de Monseñor
And
Romero
in the midst
estalla
of the
una bomba,
funeral, there's a bomb.
en la Plaza Cívica.
There's a bomb in the Plaza Civica.
Y pues como producto de esto hay una
And as a
decena de
product of
muertos
this,
y
there's
otras decenas
dozens of
que murieron
killed
a
people
causa
and another dozen that
del
were
pisoteo de
injured
las personas que
from other
huían
people that were
por
trying to
salvar sus
flee
vidas.
the space and
Eh,
save their
bueno,
lives.
el testimonio de otra mujer
The
de una comunidad
testimony
de
of
CRIPDES,
another woman
Suyapa
from a
Ortega,
community from CRIPDES
lideresa
in
de
the
Guajira,
Ciudad de
nos cuenta lo
Ortega
siguiente.
tells
Siguiente
us,
quote.
next slide, please.
Y ella me dice,
And she
después de la
said,
muerte de
quote, after the
Monseñor
death of
Romero,
Monsignor Romero,
también se
a wave
generó
of
una ola de
persecution
persecución
and repression
y de
also emerged
represión a
against
todas
all
esas
those
familias
families
que de
who,
alguna
in one way
manera
or another,
estábamos en
were aligned with the
sintonía
struggle
por
to
reivindicar
reclaim our
nuestros
rights as
derechos como
citizens,
ciudadanos, como
as
campesinos,
peasants,
como
as members
población.
of society. We, my
Nosotros
family,
decidimos dejar
decided to
nuestra
leave our home
casa
in
en
March.
marzo cuando asesinan a
So
Monseñor
when
Romero,
Monsignor Romero was killed,
porque toda la
because fear
familia se
spread
le
among
generó
all the
terror,
families, we
porque
thought,
pensábamos, si
if they
mataron a
killed
Monseñor
Monsignor
Romero,
Romero,
¿a
who
quién
else
más
will
no
they
van a
kill?
matar?
Who
¿A quién
else will they
más no van a
persecute?
perseguir? ¿A quién
Who
más
else
no
will
van
they
a
label a
tildar de
communist
comunista?
or make up some
¿O van
excuse
a
to take
inventar
their life?
cualquier otro
End
motivo
quote.
para quitarle la vida? Producto de esto,
As a product of this,
ante todas estas amenazas de la población
after,
civil,
from all these
pues
threats
se
from
decide
the civil
iniciar
society,
el conflicto
they
armado.
decided to
Se
start
unen las 5
the armed
organizaciones
war.
que conformaban,
According to the 5
eh,
organizations that made up.
siguiente, que
Next slide.
conformaban las 5 organizaciones
That made
guerrilleras
this 5
e inició un
organizations,
conflicto armado.
armed
Pero
organizations, sorry,
consigo,
there started the
trajo
armed
consigo
conflict.
pues la intensificación de la
And from
represión
this
en el territorio
intensifies
salvadoreño.
the oppression
El
in El
gobierno
Salvador.
empieza a ejecutar
The
una
government
política
starts to
contrainsurgente
execute a
con la
politic
asesoría
of
del gobierno de
insurgents
Estados Unidos que
and
se
being an
conoció
accessory to the
como
United
los
States
operativos de
government
Tierra Rosada,
that was known
que era
as the
prácticamente
operatives of Tierra
asesinar
Rosada,
o quitarle la vida
which was to
a toda
assassinate or
persona,
murder all
animal,
people,
medios de producción,
animals.
alimentación de la población civil. Y empieza uno de los periodos
And it
más
starts to
oscuros
be
de
a
la historia
period
de El
of one of
Salvador,
the darkest
las
periods of
grandes
the history
masacres.
of El Salvador, the
Entre
big
ellas,
massacres.
pues tenemos la masacre del
In
río
between them
Sumpur,
was the
que se da
Sumpur
el
River
14 de
Massacre,
mayo de 1980,
which was in May 14th,
un promedio
1980.
de 600
There was
víctimas,
about
en su
600
mayoría
victims, and the majority of
niños,
them being kids,
bebés,
babies,
personas mayores.
elderly.
Se da la masacre del
There was
calabozo en San
the
Vicente
massacre
en
of El
agosto de
Calabozo in San Vicente in
1982,
August
un promedio de
22nd,
200
1982,
víctimas.
where there was
La
about
masacre de
200
la
victims.
Quesera, que se da en el
The
departamento de
La Quesera
Usulután,
massacre in
con un promedio de
Usultan
600
in October
víctimas. Y
21st
una de
to
las masacres,
31st,
bueno,
where there
muchos
was
investigadores
about
mencionan
600
que es la
victims.
masacre más grande
A lot of
perpetuada
investigators
en
claim that this
Latinoamérica,
is the
lo que
biggest
se conoce
massacre
como la masacre
perpetrated
del
in
Mozote,
Latin America,
realizada en
is
diciembre
El
de
Mozote massacre in
1981, el 11,
Morozan,
12 y
which was
13,
December
con
11th,
más de
12th,
1000 víctimas.
13th, with more than
Bueno,
1,000
la
victims.
siguiente lámina es
Next slide. The next slide is
la tercera frase,
the
que
third
es
phrase,
opresión y
which is
solidaridad.
oppression and
Cuando la
solidarity.
iglesia escucha el
Quote,
grito de
when
los
the church hears
oprimidos,
the cry of the oppressed, it
no
cannot
puede
fail
dejar
to
de denunciar las
denounce the
estructuras
social
sociales
structures
que dan origen
that give
y
rise to
perpetúan la
and
miseria
perpetuate the
de la que
misery
surge el
from
grito.
which the cry emerges.
Bueno, aquí se empiezan a dar también los desplazamientos
And here is
forzados.
where the forced
Mucha de la población civil,
displacement
con
starts
tal
to
de
happen.
salvaguardar su vida
A lot of
y
the civil
huir de esos
society tries
operativos
to
militares
flee
de
to
tierra
save their
pasada,
lives from the
empezaron a
military.
desplazarse a otras partes
And so
del
they start
Salvador,
to spread to other
abandonando sus
parts of
casas, sus
El Salvador,
familias, sus
abandoning their
tierras,
homes, their
sus
families, their
cultivos.
land, their cultivations.
Se dieron muchos desplazamientos a nivel
And there
interno
was a
y otra
lot of
población que
internal
decide refugiarse
displacement,
fuera
and
del país.
another
Entre los
part of that
campamentos como
decided
Mesa
to
Grande,
stay
Honduras,
to move
Colomancagua,
outside to
también en
Honduras,
Nicaragua.
Colomangagua, Nicaragua.
Y bueno, empieza este desplazamiento
And so
producto de
the
violaciones a derechos
displacement
humanos
starts because of the
que se daba
breaches
desde el
to
gobierno de El
civil
Salvador.
rights
En
that were happening in El
1984
Salvador. In
surge CRIPDES,
1984,
siguiente,
CRIPDES
eh,
is born
con personas que habían sido
with
desplazadas.
people who had been displaced.
Lorena Martínez,
Lorena
principal,
Martinez,
actual presidenta de CRIPDES,
current president of
menciona que
CRIPDES, mentions
transformar este país pasaba por organizarse.
with the
De
beginning,
organizarse pasaba por decidirse
I'm
a hacer
sorry, that's the wrong quote.
transformaciones desde lo más pequeño hasta lo más
So he's
grande.
talking about transformations
Entonces,
from the
esta
smallest to
organización
the big
CRIPDES
things. So this
se creó el
organization,
comité
CRIPDES, was
conformado por
created
las
as a
familias
committee
desplazadas en la Iglesia
founded by
Rosario
the
en
displaced families
1984.
in Iglesia
Aquí
Rosario in
retomo
1984.
un documento
And
del
here
archivo
I take
histórico
up
de CRIPDES, que es un pequeño
an
fragmento de una
archival
memoria
document
de una
from
asamblea que
CRIPDES,
se da en
which is from the first
1994,
agreement made after the emergence
prácticamente
of
10 años
CRIPDES at
después
the National
elaboraron esta
Assembly
memoria
of the year
y menciona
1994.
que
And I
con el
mentioned
inicio de la guerra
with the
civil en el
beginning of the
80
Civil War in
y con
1980
el
and the
posterior desarrollo de
subsequent
toda una
development of a
política
whole
contrainsurgente
counterinsurgency
del
policy
ejército
by the
y el
Army
apoyo
with
del
the
gobierno
support of the US
estadounidense,
government,
la
the
población
civilian
civil,
population,
en su mayoría
mostly
niños,
children,
mujeres y
women, and the
ancianos,
elderly,
pasó a
became one
ser
of the
uno de los
targets to
objetivos a
be
eliminar.
eliminated.
Se
Two
desarrollaron dos
counterinsurgency
estrategias
strategies were
contrainsurgentes, las
developed.
que le mencionaba,
One,
la de tierra
scorched
pasada
earth,
y quitarle
and
agua al
two,
pez.
take the water away
Ambas
from the
llevaban
fish.
como
Both aim
objetivo
to eliminate and
eliminar y
ultimately
en esta
force the
última
population
instancia
to
obligar a
abandon
la
their places
población
of
a
origin.
abandonar sus lugares de origen, la cual fue la
This was the
causa que
reason
miles
why
de
thousands of our
compatriotas
compatriots were forcibly displaced,
forzadamente buscaron
seeking refuge
refugio
in cities
en las
within our
ciudades al
country,
interior de nuestro
while others
país y
fled
otros
to
se fueron
Central
al
American
exilio.
countries, the United
En el
States,
acuerdo
Canada,
organizativo,
Sweden, Australia,
desde entonces
and
menciona,
other
siguiente,
countries where they managed to go into exile. Next
que
slide,
nuestro
please.
trabajo se fomentó en la organización y en la conducción
So
de
our work was
repoblaciones y
founded on
repatriaciones, tanto de los
repatriations of
desplazados internos
lands
como
for
los
the
refugiados que
people
se
who had
encontraban en
moved
Honduras,
within
se
the
encontraban en
country
Nicaragua
and
y en
others that
Costa
had
Rica.
moved to other
Nuestra
outside
actividad
countries
siempre
like
estuvo
Honduras and
dirigida en
Costa Rica.
denunciar el cese a los operativos militares.
And our point was always
Bueno,
to
dentro del trabajo
denounce
de
the
CRIPDES, en otro
seizing of land from
fragmento
the
de un
military.
documento histórico,
And
pues
from
menciona que
another
lograron alrededor de
archival
13 procesos
document,
de repatriación
it mentions
de
that
estas
they were
comunidades,
able to
entre
gain
ellos pues
300, repatriate
Guajila, San
300
Antonio, Los
lands.
Panchos,
San
Las
Antonio de los
Vueltas,
Ranchos, Las
El
Vueltas,
Tremedal,
Tremedal,
Teocinte.
Teocinte.
La siguiente lámina
Next
es muy
slide
importante
is very important,
y es el
and it
apoyo
is
de la solidaridad
the
internacional,
solidarity, the international
los
solidarity, and
gastos
the support
de
from the international
solidaridad
solidarity.
y financiamiento para los retornos de las repoblaciones.
And this helped a
El
lot
trabajo de
in the
retorno
returning of the
y
lands.
repoblaciones
The
de las
work
familias
of
y a sus
reintroducing
destinos
the
de
land
origen
to
no
the
hubiera sido
original
posible
people,
sin el
which
apoyo
not would not
solidario
have
y
been possible
económico
without
de las
the
organizaciones amigas que
international
acompañaron su
solidarity.
proceso. Lorena en su testimonio menciona,
Lorena in her testimony
nosotros
mentions we wouldn't have
no
been able to
podríamos haber
do
hecho todo
all
este
that
trabajo
work
si
if
no
it
hubiera
hadn't been
sido
for
por
the
los comités
international
de solidaridad
solidarity committees
internacional
that were
que se
created in
crearon en
support of the
apoyo a la
struggle
lucha de la
of the
población
non-combatant
salvadoreña
Salvadorian population.
no combatiente.
These committees,
Esos
which over the
comités que
years
con el
have become
transcurso
our
de los
unconditional
años
allies
se han
and friends,
convertido en nuestros
back then,
aliados,
these international friends helped us to denounce the repression and
y
abuse
amigos
suffered by the
incondicionales.
civilian
En aquel
population.
entonces, estos amigos internacionales nos apoyaban en denunciar la represión y abusos que sufría la población civil. Este apoyo fue muy importante porque mencionan de que el trabajo,
The support was
si
very
bien era
important
económico,
because
pero también este apoyo
financially it helped
solidario,
out a lot,
por
but
ejemplo,
just
denunciar
the
en
solidarity
Estados
in
Unidos
itself to
las
denounce
violaciones a derechos
these
humanos que estaban
violations
pasando
of
en El
human rights that
Salvador
were happening in
y que
Salvador,
eran en gran parte financiado por el
which
gobierno de
were
Estados
in big
Unidos,
part
fue
financed
clave
by the US
para
government, was
resonarnos al nivel
key in
internacional.
bringing us up to the international
Muy bien,
level.
la memoria histórica en la actualidad,
Great, the
esto es lo que
historical
hacemos,
memory. This
plantamos la
is what we
semilla que
do.
un
We
día
plant the seeds that one
crecerán,
day will grow. We
regamos
water
semillas ya
seeds already
plantadas, sabiendo
planted,
que
knowing that they
encierran
hold
las
future
promesas
promise.
futuras. En las comunidades de CRIPDES
In the communities
actualmente
of CRIPDES,
hay un papel
there
importante
is a
en
very
cuanto de
important role
recordar
currently
con estos
in
símbolos
trying to
inspiradores, tanto
remember
Monseñor Romero
with these
y otros
important
símbolos,
symbols
como ya lo
like El
mencioné,
Señor Romero and other
por
symbols like I
ejemplo,
have
con la promoción
mentioned,
de la memoria
with
histórica
the
para
promotion
fortalecer el
of
sentido de identidad
memory
y
and
pertenencia
history
de las
and to
comunidades.
increase
Los espacios de
the
memoria
belonging
que
to
son
these
claves
spaces.
para construir
And these are
memoria e
important in
identidad.
creating identity as
Eh,
well.
las conmemoraciones de fechas
These
importantes de
commemorations
estas
also for
violaciones a
important
derechos
dates
humanos,
of when
los
these events
testimonios de la
happened for these
transmisión
violations
intergeneracional
of
de
human
memoria
rights.
y la defensa de los derechos humanos.
And yeah,
Por
just the
ejemplo, el
defense
noveno,
overall of
estos
human
monumentos que
rights
son
that they
clave
fought for in these
y que dan
communities.
cuenta en la
And these
cotidianidad
monuments
de
are a
que estos
remembrance
hechos
to
de
that,
violaciones a derechos humanos sí pasaron. Por
and that
ejemplo,
these
tenemos la
human rights
cripta de
violations
Monseñor
did
Romero
happen.
y un
For
monumento que
example,
se
we have the
encuentra en la
monument of
comunidad de
Señor
Paisnal de
Romero
Monseñor Romero y Rutilio Grande.
and Rutilio
Vemos una
Grande as well.
conmemoración en esta
We see a
ocasión,
big
pues conmemorando
commemoration
la
here
masacre del río Zumpul, donde este símbolo de
depicting the
Monseñor Romero
massacre of
siempre
Rio
está
Sumpun.
presente como un símbolo
So
inspirador
for us,
que nos
Romero is
guía a
always
seguir
a present
luchando
symbol that guides
contra
us
las
to keep
injusticias.
struggling against these
Y
injustices.
bueno, Monseñor Romero
And
en la
Monsignor
actualidad,
Romero in
en la defensa
the
de los derechos humanos. Monseñor
currently
Romero y su
is a
legado está
big
presente
symbol
como referente defensor de derechos
and
humanos.
is a big
Entre las
symbol for
luchas
us
actuales, pues
as
encontramos a
a symbol
Monseñor
for
Romero,
human rights
este
and
símbolo inspirador
the fight
que
for
nos
that.
ayuda a denunciar las violaciones a derechos humanos en un contexto donde este gobierno está repitiendo lo que
And
pasó
currently, in
hace
our
más
current
de 30,
context, the
40
government is
años,
repeating what
por
happened 30,
ejemplo,
40
con un
years
régimen de
ago.
excepción
For
y
example,
la reactivación de la
the
ley de minería.
reactivation
Vemos, por
of
ejemplo,
the
el
ley, of
pasado
the law,
24 de
Ley de
marzo en la
Economía.
conmemoración, la población civil organizada
And
y
here we
muchas
see
de las
on March
comunidades de
24th,
CRIPDES
the civilian
retomaron este
mobilization
símbolo
against
de
the
Monseñor
mining
Romero
law.
para
On,
abanderar sus
and they're
luchas
using Señor
actuales como un
Romero
símbolo de
as a
esperanza
symbol of
y de
hope
reivindicación.
and
Por el momento, acá
reinvocation.
me quedo. Muchas gracias.
And for the moment, I am done. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that lovely presentation, Jonathan. Gracias. So we are going to now turn it over to Michael Ring to hear about some of the current realities. And so Michael Ring is the previous board president and staff member of Sister Cities. Currently, he is on the Sister Cities policy team. And so I will turn it over to Michael now to share some words with us.
Thank you, Patrice. And many thanks to Jonathan for that excellent review of the struggle in El Salvador. And it's so wonderful to see the next generation integrating all of that legacy into their lives and to their work. So thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, I've been asked for the simple task of spending 5 minutes to explain how this all relates to the current political context, mostly in the US, which I, of course, can't do in 5 minutes, but I'll do my best. Good thing is, knowing many of you on the call, it's good to see many compañeras and compañeros who I know, and it's good to meet new ones. You all know much of this, so this will just be a quick bullet point review to center ourselves about why we need to continue this work. But quickly, this is a time of perhaps unprecedented in many of our lifetimes, at least, economic, political, and cultural upheaval in the United States. I just want to mention a few things about this that you already know, but to highlight them and center ourselves. One is we have a complete abandonment of any attempt by the federal government to address the ecological crisis that threatens the very functioning of key ecological systems on our planet that allow us and other beings on this planet to survive. In fact, today, Trump, as you may have seen, called for the reestablishment of coal plants to fund and give energy for increased artificial intelligence production. Couldn't think of a more dystopian thing to come up with, but there it is. That's federal policy as of today. We have unprecedented wealth inequality. We have a failing basic social infrastructures in the United States around key issues like housing, which is not affordable for working people, or healthcare, which is not accessible or affordable to working people. We have over 50% of the US population with no significant savings to be able to survive any disruption in their basic week-to-week or day-to-day life. We have a fortification of the US military and imperial powers, including a newly proposed $1 trillion Pentagon budget, military threats against other countries, including, as of today, Mexico, where apparently we're going to go ahead and threaten to militarily intervene in Mexico to stop the quote-unquote cartels. We also have the ongoing funding of the slaughter of innocent people in Gaza that the US is completely compliant in, alongside the current Netanyahu government in Israel. The always limited for many marginalized populations US democratic and legal systems that never fully integrated the rights of historically marginalized groups is now teetering on the edge of not functioning at all. We have a heightened basic attack on immigrants, on reproductive rights, on the basic right for public education, and for retirement security, among other things. We have a gutting of the basic functioning of the federal government, including vital programs like Social Security. And we now have a moment which unfortunately is very similar to things experienced historically in El Salvador, where people are grabbed off the street without any judicial process and taken away into custody, many times with their family not even knowing where they're being taken. Right now, that's happening to mostly international students who have spoken out on the rights of Palestinian people. But as we all know, who's next if they can do this to those people? So that's a quick preview on the current situation in the United States. In terms of how that connects to the work we're all doing, any of you can make those connections. I know you do it every day, but to briefly recover those, we see that the only true answer to protecting rights and to building a different society is to organize communities of love, solidarity, and support, both at home and across borders. And Sister Cities has been doing this work together with our sister communities and with CRIPDES for over 40 years. So we know what we're doing. And we have a model that other people can be inspired by, and we can be inspired by her. And just to note specifically about the situation in El Salvador before I finish, We know that since 2019, when Nayib
Y
Bukele took power,
sabemos que después
there
de
was a very challenging
2019,
situation for people to
Bukele
organize for
toma
basic
poder
social and human rights in El Salvador, given his overwhelming victory and accumulation of power. And we've seen the devastating consequences for marginalized communities and organizing communities in El Salvador. But little did we know how important this relationship would be to human rights in the United States, where now Bukele's regime is being used as a gulag to deport people who the United States government deems unworthy. And that is a threat to all of our human rights. So that's a quick covering of some of the context that we all face about why this work is so important and how the legacy of Romero and the CRIPDES communities and the many martyrs of the Salvadoran struggle and those of us who have been honored to accompany them are relevant in today's work and why it's so important that we continue this work of US El Salvador Sister Cities. And I'll be back later to invite all of you
de
and your friends and
que
family to contribute
después va a
to this work in a different way in a little while. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael. Um, just real quick, is there anything tech-wise? I saw some chatter in the chat, so I just want to pause if there's anything we can be helpful with. Okay. All right. All set. Okay, thank you. All right, so we're gonna get back into we're almost at the end of our time together, so wanted to give you all another chance to chat with each other. We're gonna get into breakout rooms in a
más
moment.
de hablar.
If you had any questions or anything that are coming up, comments, please drop those in the chat. We'll when we come back from breakout rooms, we'll have a moment as a larger group and we can integrate all of that. So in a moment, you all will get put into breakout rooms. You don't get to choose this time, but you get put into breakout rooms, and we're gonna encourage you to discuss these 3 questions. I just put a document in the chat, and I'll also copy and paste. There are 3 questions. We only want you to report back on the last one, which is what seeds are we planting today? So we'd love for you to discuss all of them in your breakout rooms, but then when we come back, we're just going to share with each other what were some of the seeds that we discussed that we're planting today. So we'll have a little bit longer in groups. We'll have about 10 minutes in our small groups, and then we'll come back and have a big chat all together. So see you all back here soon. All right, thanks, Emma. Patrice, anything you wanted to add before we?
No, that covered it. Aurora, I was in the group with Aurora, but I think all of these thoughts are really wonderful, and we can, think of these as we continue to engage in actions as well in our own communities to continue the legacy of Oscar Romero.
And you'll hear a little bit more in a moment from Marin about some of the actions that you all can take to get involved. But first, pass things back over to Mike.
Yeah, hey everyone. So you get to hear from me twice. Sorry for the double take on that. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to share a little bit about why this fundraising campaign is so important. As you guys all know, organizing and solidarity are the keys to sustainable social change. And there are many ways to honor Oscar Romero and the thousands of martyrs from the Salvadoran struggle. One of those key ways is to sustain this vital work through our organizing, our advocacy, our education, and through putting the resources together to make all this possible. So yes, fundraising, people. And you all know we can't sustain the work without economic support. I just wanted to give a few explanations about what you all know. This is a group that's very involved, but why Sister Cities? There's so many important things to do. Many of us are stretched financially. So why contribute to Sister Cities? Well, Sister Cities is very unique on at least 3 ways that I wanted to share briefly. One is we support great grassroots organizing in El Salvador that has a long tradition and has spanned the generations. You just heard from Jonathan. Many of you know the organizers who came before him. This is a critical legacy, not only for El Salvador, but for humanity. And you get to contribute to it by supporting CRIPDES' legacy of organizing and continuing that tradition. The second is to challenge power structures in the US and El Salvador that are threatening all of our rights. Sister Cities is a super unique organization with the partnership we have with the communities in El Salvador and with CRIPDES. There are very few social justice organizations that have the depth of relationships across borders to make a difference in this fight, particularly at a time when the regimes of the US and El Salvador are collaborating in repression against both of our peoples. And third, you know that in sister cities, you would actually know the people who are doing the work. You're here on a call with many of the organizers, both in El Salvador and in the US, whose your dollars fund their work. So you have any questions about it, you can actually ask them, not like many of these other groups where it's like you send a check off, you really have no idea what actually happens to it. In sister cities, you can call up Emma and be like, Emma, what the heck are you doing with that check I sent you? And Emma's like, I got you. Or you call up Kelly and say, what's going on in El Salvador? You write her an email. And then they can even ask you, what's Jonathan doing? And Kelly can talk to Jonathan or Sulma can talk to Jonathan and let you know. So this is really unique in fundraising in the United States. So I think it's a great opportunity to support an amazing organization that I've been fortunate to be part of for over 35 years. The Ring Martinez family, I consulted with the higher authorities here. We're going to make a $200 contribution as part of this work for this particular fundraiser. And before I close, I wanted to ask if anybody here has already made a contribution, but also more importantly with this group, a group of organizers, asked other people to make contributions or found other ways to ask people to be involved in this work by sending your friends a letter or an email asking them to contribute, organizing an event at your home, or whatever ideas you come up with to honor the legacy of Oscar Romero, the Salvadoran people, and CRIPDES and Sister City. So I don't know if anybody had anything they wanted to share about the contribution you've already made and make your own pitch. I feel like this group is probably the group that's already contributed. So I'm hoping I give you guys tools to go out and get some other people to contribute. Of course, if you haven't been able to contribute yourself, yes, Emma has put the link in there. Please make a click, and any amount is great. If I heard Lee, did I mishear Lee and say she had $1 million in her legacy to contribute? Was that? Oh no, sorry. So if any of you have more you can contribute, that's amazing. But Sister Cities really gets by small donations and regular sustained donations. So we really appreciate anyone's contribution. So with that, I'll turn it back to the organizers. Let's stay strong, everyone. Adelante. Together, we can do great things. So el pueblo unido jamás será vencido.
Thank you so much, Michael. I just wanted to take a minute to mention some of the other ways that you can also continue to be involved with Sister Cities. This, as Michael already said as well, is a wonderfully super involved group, so that's fantastic. If you're not yet signed up for the Urgent Action Network, I would recommend that you do that. For those who don't know, our Urgent Action Network you can sign up on our website. I'll put the link in the chat in a minute. And you can get an email approximately once a month or every 6 weeks that gives you a rundown of urgent actions that you can do to support El Salvador and also initiatives that are occurring here in the US. Also, if you're interested in supporting more than just to this particular fundraiser, becoming a monthly sustainer is a wonderful option. It's great to know that we have money coming in a reliable way. It allows us to plan the things that we do. And you can join a delegation in 2025, or you can join our Popular Education School, which will be from August 10th to 17th. And will be a really cool experience to learn popular education organizing techniques in archival. I will put the link to our blog with frequently asked questions in the chat right now. And thank you so much for coming. You can continue to be involved in our member meetings and other events like this. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you, everyone. Patrice, before I say our goodbyes, any last words you wanted to say?
Thank you all for coming out tonight. I appreciate all of the speakers and just the reminders to remember the legacy of Romero as we, continue to plant seeds for today. Just yeah, wish you all the best and consider donating to this work so that it can continue. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Patrice. So, as if you had as much fun tonight as I did, our next member meeting is in May. You can also keep track of all of our upcoming events on our website. We have these monthly member meetings as well as many, many other meetings that everyone is welcome to join. So, you can keep up with that on our events page on our website. Please join us next month in May. We'll be focused on Las Anonas and our flood relief effort. And that will be on the 21st at 8 p.m. again. I hope tonight felt like some quenching rain, some warm sunshine, some fertile ground for your seeds of change. It's events like this that make me just so honored and proud to be a part of this community and this organization. So thank you everyone for being here and making this event what it was, and wish you all a wonderful evening. So thank you everyone. And you have 2 extra minutes to check out all the links in the chat and to give your donation if you have not done that yet. So thank you everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Right.